The boardroom was dead quiet. Not just quiet in the usual, polite way, but the kind of silence that happens when a grenade rolls under the table and everyone's waiting to see who it's going to take out. Rachel Donovan stood at the head of the table, posture as precise as her tailored navy dress. The sunlight from the floor-to-ceiling windows cut across her pale blazer, making her look more like a courtroom executioner than the CEO of one of the country's largest defense technology firms. Her voice was calm when she said it, like she was announcing quarterly earnings. "Meet my husband," she told them. She didn't smile. Rachel Donovan didn't smile for the board. A dozen expensive chairs creaked as heads swiveled toward the door. He walked in without hurry, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that had clearly been rented or borrowed. Logan Hayes. His hair was neatly combed, but his hands bore the faint calluses of manual labor. And if the suit seemed out of place, his expression did not. Steady, unreadable. A man who was either completely comfortable under scrutiny or entirely indifferent to it. Half the board recognized him instantly. Not because he was a celebrity. Not because they'd met him before. But because for months they'd walked past him without ever really seeing him. The janitor. The quiet man who emptied trash cans and mopped their floors after hours. And now, the new Mr. Rachel Donovan. Rachel's gaze swept the room like a blade. "Yes," she said, anticipating the questions none of them dared voice. "We were married last week." The silence turned heavy, weighted with disbelief. A few tried for neutral expressions. Others failed miserably. Marcus Blackwood, the board chairman and her late father's oldest friend, regarded Logan with a kind of polite suspicion, his handshake lingering as if searching for something hidden beneath the man's skin. Logan met his eyes, unblinking. He didn't give Marcus the satisfaction of a nervous shift. "When you know, you know," Rachel said smoothly, one manicured hand resting on Logan's arm. If anyone noticed that Logan hadn't spoken a single word yet, they kept it to themselves. 6 weeks earlier, she'd been walking through the lobby of Atlas Defense Technologies for the first time as its sole leader. Her father had been dead for a month. An accident, they'd called it. A suspicious yacht fire off the Gulf Coast. Rachel had inherited not just the company he'd built from nothing, but also the Will's single, absurd stipulation. Marry within 30 days, or lose controlling interest in Atlas. The elevator ride to her office felt like a countdown clock ticking in her head. She'd known every inch of this company since she was a teenager shadowing her father. She'd fought tooth and nail for credibility in an industry where CEOs wore combat medals, not Italian heels. Now a legal clause was threatening to hand her father's life's work to a board that saw her as a placeholder until a man they trusted took the reins. The candidates her assistant Vanessa lined up for emergency matrimony were exactly what she expected. Attractive, ambitious, and useless to her plan. Too connected to the board. Too eager to leverage her for influence. Too likely to outmaneuver her once the ink dried. "I need someone with no stake in Atlas," she told Vanessa, turning from the skyline back to her desk. "Someone who understands discretion. Someone I can control." The words tasted bitter even as she spoke them. She met Logan 3 nights later, in a dim bar on the far edge of Austin, where no one from Atlas would recognize her. The whiskey was strong, the lighting forgiving. She hadn't planned to talk to anyone, let alone a man. He was sitting alone at the end of the bar, nursing a drink with the unhurried patience of someone who wasn't there to chase anything. His eyes tracked the room the way a wolf watches the tree line, calm, but always aware of movement. When she ended up beside him, conversation came surprisingly easy. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did, his words were measured. Sometimes, he said, after she'd vaguely hinted at the impossible situation she was in, the most complicated problems have the simplest solutions. There was something about the way he said it, a quiet certainty, no ego, that made her listen. She noticed the details then. The scar along his jaw, the kind of posture that doesn't come from yoga. His hands, strong, precise, cradling his glass like it was something fragile. When a drunk decided Rachel looked like the perfect target for a late-night conquest, Logan didn't so much as raise his voice. A quick, efficient motion, a wrist lock, a shift of weight, and the man was backing away, apologizing. It was so fast most of the bar didn't even register what had happened. Her guard slipped further with each drink, with each calm glance from those watchful eyes. The night blurred into laughter she hadn't expected and an impulsive invitation to her penthouse. The next morning, sunlight found Logan standing at her window, silhouetted against the city skyline. His posture was military straight, his presence far too grounded for someone in his position. Maintenance, he told her when she asked what he did for a living. She should have felt embarrassed. The CEO of Atlas in bed with the janitor. Instead, she saw potential. No connections. No ambitions in her world. No ability to threaten her position. She offered him a contract over coffee. 1 year. Generous monthly payments. Separate lives. Complete discretion. He agreed, but with one condition: no background checks beyond the one you already ran when I was hired. Rachel assumed it was debt, maybe a minor brush with the law. She didn't ask. They were married 3 days later in a courthouse with no witnesses except the clerk. No champagne. No flowers. Just signatures and a mutual understanding. Neither of them noticed the man across the street with a telephoto lens, photographing the new couple before sending an encrypted message. Target situation has changed. New variable introduced. Rachel had expected the board's skepticism. She had not expected Logan to look so completely unmoved by it. When they returned to her penthouse that evening, she laid out the rules. Separate bedrooms. No interference in her work. Public appearances only when necessary. He agreed to all of it without hesitation. She also suggested, delicately, that perhaps he take a paid leave from his janitorial duties at Atlas. The last thing she needed was the gossip. I prefer to earn my keep, he said simply. Rachel filed it under quirks of a man with too much pride, unaware that his real reason had nothing to do with pride and everything to do with access. They fell into a rhythm, quickly, the kind of rhythm you have with a roommate you barely know. She was up at 5 for her punishing workouts, followed by 14-hour days at the office. He worked nights, drifting in and out of the penthouse like a shadow. And yet, there were moments when insomnia kept her pacing the apartment at 2 in the morning. She'd find a perfect cup of chamomile tea waiting on the counter. No note, no explanation. When she forgot to eat during a week of non-stop negotiations, her office fridge would mysteriously contain balanced meals, neatly packed. He never mentioned these things, and she didn't thank him. But she noticed. One Thursday, she came home earlier than expected and found him in the living room doing push-ups, the kind that require full control of your body weight. So slow and precise, they looked effortless. He rose when he saw her, not winded in the slightest. "Staying fit helps me work better," was all he said. She let it go, but the inconsistency lodged in her mind. Their first real clash came 2 weeks later. Rachel was hosting a dinner for high-ranking military officials, a deal-maker event that could secure a new missile guidance contract. Her plan had been flawless. She'd handle the board and the brass, while Logan stayed out of sight entirely. Instead, he stepped into the dining room mid-meal when he noticed her beginning to stumble through a story about Atlas's early R&D days. Without missing a beat, he eased into the conversation, speaking the military's language, not just the terminology, but the subtle cadence of someone who had lived it. He referenced weapon systems with unnerving precision, threw in a few offhand remarks about logistics that made 2 generals nod in approval. By dessert, the officials were looking at him as if he belonged in the conversation. Rachel wanted to strangle him. "You were drowning," he told her afterward, his tone calm. "I kept you afloat." "I don't need rescuing," she snapped. "Everyone does sometimes." And then, just as she was ready to demand where he'd learned that kind of insider knowledge, he walked away. Logan's nights at Atlas weren't spent mopping floors anymore. Not really. Under the cover of maintenance work, he explored the building's secure areas. His ID badge gave him just enough clearance to linger near places most janitors never saw: server rooms, prototype storage bays, lower-level labs. He noticed things. Encrypted communications, bypassing official channels. Shipments of technology whose destinations didn't match the paperwork. Security gaps that no legitimate contractor would allow. Patterns. He'd seen these patterns before. 3 months into their marriage, Rachel secured the Department of Defense contract. It was her biggest win since taking over, and the celebration at Atlas was predictably high profile. Military brass, politicians, press. Rachel, in a midnight blue gown, was the image of corporate control as she delivered her keynote. Logan stood back near the service entrance, scanning the crowd the way other people check weather reports. Constant, instinctive. The first thing that felt wrong was the catering staff. Too many of them had access to restricted zones. The second was a security guard who seemed to patrol at random instead of following standard patterns. Logan tracked the guard's movements. The man's hand brushed the inside of his jacket as he closed in on Rachel's position. Logan moved. He crossed the room in seconds, no wasted motion, reaching her just as the guard drew a concealed pistol. The shot grazed Logan's arm instead of finding Rachel's chest. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed. Security converged. Logan disarmed the man with a fluid efficiency that made even the trained guards falter. By the time the would-be assassin was restrained, Logan had vanished from the scene entirely. Rachel found him an hour later in the penthouse bathroom, blood on the white tile, stitching his own wound with hands that didn't shake. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Someone with security experience." That's not enough of an answer. He looked at her then, calm as ever. "You're alive. That's the answer that matters tonight." She hated that part of her agreed with him. The next morning, Rachel arrived at Atlas under a mask of corporate composure. To the board, the assassination attempt had been an isolated security incident, the official statement she'd personally approved. But in the private elevator ride to her office, she replayed the image of Logan moving through that crowd. The precision, the speed, the certainty. No janitor learned to neutralize a threat like that. Vanessa, her assistant, was already waiting in the office with a tablet of updates. "Security's running background on the shooter," Vanessa said. "No ID yet, prints burned. He's ghosting in every system." Rachel nodded absently, her mind elsewhere. Logan's words from the night before had stuck with her. "You're alive. That's the answer that matters tonight." It wasn't just the confidence in his tone. It was the way he'd said it, like someone who'd had to measure life in seconds more times than he could count. That evening, she came home to find him in the kitchen, rinsing blood from the sleeve of his shirt. The stitches looked cleaner than anything she'd seen in a hospital. "You're not telling me the truth," she said. "I'm telling you what you need to know." "I decide what I need to know," she countered. His eyes met hers, steady. "Not in my world, you don't." While Rachel fought to keep her company moving forward, Logan's nights became more calculated. His cover as janitor was the perfect shield. He could move through secure wings with a mop bucket, and no one thought twice. What he found was worse than he'd anticipated. Misrouted shipments. Encrypted communications leaving Atlas servers. Prototypes that vanished before testing. It wasn't sloppy corruption. It was deliberate. And it had started before Joseph Donovan's death. One night in the basement archives, Logan found financial discrepancies stretching back months. Money funneled through shell companies into accounts offshore. Some of the transaction dates lined up with critical weapons tests that had mysteriously failed. He wasn't ready to tell Rachel. Not yet. She was still a wild card. Too smart to manipulate, too stubborn to back down. But every night, he tightened the net. Rachel's patience with him fractured one evening when she intercepted a call he clearly hadn't intended her to overhear, a low murmur in a language she couldn't place. His tone clipped and professional. When she confronted him, he gave her nothing, but it was work-related. "You're a janitor," she said, voice sharp. His expression didn't change. "Everyone's got a day job." 3 weeks after the attempt on her life, the stakes jumped again. The Atlas prototype database, the crown jewel of their R&D, came under direct cyberattack. Rachel's top engineers were scrambling to isolate the breach when Logan walked in unannounced. She should have ordered him out. Instead, she watched his hands blur over a keyboard with the speed of someone who'd done this in less comfortable situations, probably with bullets involved. In under 15 minutes, He traced the attack to an internal access point. The originating ID belonged to someone Rachel had trusted since childhood. Marcus Blackwood. Rachel's first instinct was to confront him directly, but Logan stopped her. "If he's in this deep, he's not working alone," Logan said. "You go after him now, you tip the whole network." The words "whole network" hit her like ice water. "You've seen this before," she said. "Yes." "In the military?" A pause. "Something like that." Reluctantly, she agreed to play it his way, quietly gathering more evidence before making a move. The nights that followed blurred into a strange alliance. Rachel brought corporate access and a knowledge of Atlas's inner workings no outsider could match. Logan brought everything else. They set up a secure workspace in an abandoned wing of the Atlas campus. It became their war room, maps of shipment routes pinned to the walls, timelines of sabotage incidents, printouts of intercepted messages marked with Logan's terse annotations. The deeper they dug, the uglier it got. Weapons sabotaged after delivery to U.S. forces. Classified designs showing up overseas. Shell companies that existed only to collect bribes. One term kept appearing in encrypted exchanges. Phoenix containment. Rachel didn't know what it meant, but Logan's reaction each time was the same. A flicker of tension in his jaw, a shadow in his eyes. "What is it?" she asked. He didn't answer. The answer came in a different form. Late one night, 3 men with military precision breached their workspace. No words, no demands, just an immediate attack. Logan moved faster than she thought possible, pulling her behind cover. Issuing clipped commands, she obeyed without question. 3 steps behind me. Move when I move. Freeze when I signal. The man who'd spent months blending into the background was gone. In his place stood a commander, someone born for chaos, every motion sharp and economical. By the time it was over, 2 of the attackers were unconscious. One lay groaning on the floor, and Rachel was staring at Logan like she'd never seen him before. Because she hadn't. The last of the intruders hit the ground hard, a dull thud against the concrete floor. Logan didn't pause to admire his work. He caught Rachel's arm and moved, guiding her through the maze of service corridors without a backward glance. "Where are we going?" she demanded, breathless. "Someplace they won't find you," he said. The way he said they made her skin crawl. The someplace was a nondescript building on the outskirts of Austin. From the outside, it was just another warehouse in a row of half-abandoned industrial properties. Inside, it was something else entirely, a fortified nest of contingencies. Secure comms gear, weapons, cash in multiple currencies, medical supplies, multiple escape routes marked and ready. Rachel stood in the center of it, absorbing the implications. "You've had this set up the whole time." "Yes." "This marriage of ours, was that part of the mission?" He didn't look away. "No. It was an opportunity, but not planned." Once the perimeter was secured, he gave her the rest, or at least the parts he was willing to. Former military. Special operations. Tasked with embedding inside Atlas after Joseph Donovan reached out with suspicions of internal sabotage. He didn't know who to trust, Logan said. "I was a quiet way in." Her father's name on Logan's lips made the air feel thinner. "You knew him," she said. "Not well. Once a long time ago, but well enough to take his warning seriously." Before she could press further, Logan's secure terminal pinged. A message in terse military shorthand. Sable Phoenix compromised. Primary targets include Atlas leadership. Rachel didn't know what it meant, but the flicker in Logan's eyes told her it wasn't good. Then came the surveillance footage, her penthouse, her personal items, her private moments. Someone had been listening for months, maybe years. "They've been watching me," she whispered, the violation crawling under her skin. "They've been watching an image of you," Logan corrected quietly. "Not the real you." Somewhere between the adrenaline and the anger, the air shifted between them. Maybe it was the fact they'd nearly been killed twice in as many weeks. Maybe it was months of restrained glances breaking all at once. Whatever it was, the boundaries they'd set back in that courthouse dissolved. It was not polite or careful. It was the collision of 2 people used to control, finally letting go. Afterward, The safe house felt different, not just a place to hide, but a shared space. Logan told her more that night than he had in the 3 months prior. Not classified mission reports, but the human cost. The years of never standing still, the things he'd done and couldn't undo, the names he'd never forget. Rachel, in turn, admitted the isolation of her position, the constant suspicion she lived under even before her father's death. "I haven't trusted anyone in years," she confessed. "Trust is a luxury," he said. "But sometimes it's a necessity." The next breach came not with gunfire, but code. Atlas's servers lit up with another intrusion attempt, this one aimed directly at the prototype database. It wasn't just about stealing data. Whoever was inside knew exactly where to hit to cripple the company. By day, Rachel wore her CEO mask and played her part. By night, she and Logan worked side by side in the safe house, tracing packet flows, isolating compromised accounts, building profiles of the people inside Atlas who were playing both sides. She learned more about him in those hours than she had in all their staged public appearances. That he could read human behavior like a blueprint. That he spoke 3 languages without an accent in any of them. That he tracked arms dealers across continents and knew exactly how long it took to disappear a person. In turn, he learned that her mind was every bit as tactical as his, just in a different theater. She thought in terms of systems and redundancies, anticipating sabotage before it happened. Their investigation finally broke open when they found a buried directory on one of her father's personal servers. In it, encrypted logs, offshore transactions, and surveillance footage of a younger Logan in military uniform, standing rigid while a general pinned a medal on his chest. The file named him Commander Hayes, Sable Phoenix Unit, credited with stopping multiple terrorist attacks on American soil. And then her father's voice in a recorded message. "If you're seeing this, I failed to stop the traitors inside Atlas. Trust no one from the board. If Commander Hayes reaches you, he's the only one you can trust completely." Rachel confronted Logan with it. "You weren't just some soldier. You were the one my father wanted here. Yes, you lied to me from the moment we met. I kept the parts you didn't need to know to keep you alive." Before the conversation could burn further, an alert came through. Blackwood had called an emergency board meeting, the kind that ends with a CEO escorted out of the building. Logan read the timestamp, his jaw tightening. He's making his move. Rachel stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she said, "Fine. Let's make ours." The boardroom had always felt like neutral ground, polished wood, glass walls, a view of Austin's skyline stretching to the horizon. Today, it was a battlefield. Rachel walked in first, flanked by Logan. Gone was the borrowed suit and unassuming posture. He wore a tailored jacket that did nothing to hide the military bearing in his shoulders. Every step said, "I belong here." Blackwood's eyebrows twitched at the sight, but his voice was smooth. "Rachel, we were just reviewing some urgent security concerns." She set her folder down with a quiet finality. "Good. I brought my head of personal security." A few board members shifted uncomfortably. They didn't know if she was joking. Blackwood wasted no time. He laid out a sequence of doctored emails, falsified transaction records, all painting Rachel as the one leaking classified technology to foreign buyers. When he finished, the murmurs around the table were low and sharp. Rachel didn't blink. "If those were real, Marcus, I'd already be in handcuffs. But they're not. And here's the real picture." She slid her evidence across the table. Records of Blackwood's offshore accounts, matching deposits to dates of sabotaged Atlas prototypes. Logan stepped forward, projecting intercepted messages onto the wall. Messages between Blackwood and known arms brokers. The room shifted. Doubt turned toward the accuser. Blackwood's mask cracked. "You're desperate, Rachel. Trying to save yourself by smearing your father's oldest friend." "My father started investigating you weeks before his death," she said, her voice cold as steel. The board hadn't processed that when Blackwood triggered the building lockdown. Red emergency lights bathed the walls. Security doors sealed with a heavy metallic thud. Logan's voice was low in her ear. "This isn't containment. It's an execution protocol." Atlas became a maze of flashing lights and armed security teams loyal to Blackwood. Over the PA, his voice dripped with faux concern. For everyone's safety, remain in your offices until the breach is contained. In reality, teams were sweeping toward the boardroom, not to protect, but to erase witnesses. Rachel kept moving, bypassing lockouts with her CEO override codes. Logan took point, guiding her through service corridors, clearing threats with clinical precision. Their goal was the server core, the one place where every shred of evidence lived. If they could secure it before Blackwood wiped the drives, they could bury him permanently. But Blackwood was already there. He didn't look surprised to see them. His hands flew over the keyboard, initiating a purge while speaking without looking up. Your father thought Atlas should be a shield. I turned it into a sword, and a sword sells better when both sides need it. Rachel moved to the terminal. A sword doesn't protect anyone. That's why you'll never own Atlas. Blackwood drew a pistol. Logan stepped between them before the weapon cleared its holster. The fight was fast, brutal. Two men who knew the stakes and didn't care about the bruises. A shot went off. Logan staggered but stayed on his feet. Finish it, he told Rachel, voice tight. She ignored the burn of panic and focused on the code. Blackwood had locked the drives into a self-destruct countdown. There wasn't time to stop it completely, but there was time to divert enough data to her father's hidden server. She worked while Logan fought. The final blow sent Blackwood sprawling, motionless. Got it, she said, hitting the last command. Then we leave, Logan replied, blood soaking his shoulder. The explosion rolled through the lower levels as they cleared the building. Sirens. Smoke. Atlas's heart had taken a hit, but the proof was safe. Rachel stayed at Logan's side through surgery, ignoring the press, the board, and the half-dozen agencies demanding her attention. When he woke, they didn't speak about what had happened. They didn't need to. 6 months later, Atlas Defense Technologies was transformed. Transparency became policy. Contracts favored defensive systems over offensive weapons. The new Joseph Donovan Memorial Research Wing carried a plaque, shields, not swords. Logan's official title was Director of Security. His unofficial role was the man Rachel trusted above anyone else. They'd replaced their courthouse vows with a small private ceremony. No board members, no press, just two people who'd started as a contract and ended as something else entirely. At the dedication of the new Sable Phoenix Initiative, a protocol ensuring no Atlas system could be exploited without multi-tier clearance, Rachel spoke to the assembled crowd. My father believed in building shields, not swords. This initiative ensures we never forget that purpose. A reporter asked about the name. She smiled. It means rising stronger from the ashes. Something Atlas and I have done before. Later, at home, Logan told her the truth about the first time they met. She'd been a teenager, he a soldier on the edge of losing everything. She'd handed him half a sandwich without thinking. I hadn't eaten in 3 days, he said. You told me everyone deserves to eat. I never forgot it. She reached for his hand. Then I guess this whole thing was inevitable. When his secure terminal pinged with a new threat pattern, Rachel didn't sigh or hesitate. She closed her laptop, crossed to him, and looked at the data. Another mission? She asked. Logan's smile was small but certain. With you? Always.